Now, former Republican House Speaker Dennis Hastert was sentenced today to more than a year in a hush money case that included accusations that he sexually abused teens while being a coach for high school. Now, this, of course, is a deeply disturbing case, and I've got some of the details here. But first, his sentence, which was handed down by Judge Thomas Durkin, was first, part of the sentence was he was ordered to undergo sex offender treatment and then spend 2 years on supervised release after 15 months in prison, as well as pay $250,000 fine to the Crime Victims Fund. In explaining his punishment, the judge called Hastert, quote, a serial child molester, and described as unconscionable his attempt to accuse one of the victims of extortion. Well, that is fucking classy, dude. You molest someone as a teenager, and then when they come after you later, you're just trying to extort me. You're just trying to extort me. The thing is that he pled guilty last fall to violating banking law, as he sought to pay $3.5 million to someone referred to in court papers only as an individual A to keep this whole thing secret. Hush money. Hush money. Now, of course, that didn't work. So according to the hearings, this victim, who was identified as a former athlete who said he was molested by Hastert decades ago, told the courtroom in testimony that he was devastated by the abuse. Now, this man, now in his 50s, said Hastert abused him while they were alone in a locker room. In the years since, he said, he sought professional help and had trouble sleeping. He said the memory still causes him pain. Oof. There's more. He said he trusted and looked up to Hastert before he was abused. And see, here's the thing. That's the thing about sexual abuse and rape. It's almost rarely done by some masked stranger breaking into your house. No, it's almost always done by someone you know. Someone maybe who has authority, someone you trust, someone you maybe look up to. Now, of course, that makes the terrible thing even worse. It makes it that much worse. Now, in his own statement, Hastert told the court that he mistreated some of his athletes and said he was deeply ashamed. Quote, I'm sorry to those I hurt and misled. What I did was wrong, and I regret it. I'm sorry, but mistreated? That's only half of what this guy did to these people who were still kids. Mistreated. Mistreated. Talk about understatement of the year. God, if this guy doesn't piss you off, then you are not human. Then you are not feeling anything, or you might be just like him. This guy. And look, there was more than one victim. In fact, one of the victims was a man named Stephen Reinbold. Now, according to his sister, Jolene Burge, Hastert had abused her brother throughout his years when he went to Yorkville High School, where Hastert was a history teacher and a coach from the years of 1965 to 1981. Now, why wasn't Reinbold there? Because he ended up dying of AIDS in 1995. Oof. In all, authorities allege that Hastert abused at least 4 students throughout his years at that school. Make no mistake, this guy is a predator. He's a serial child molester. So why the hell did he only get a year in prison? This guy should be locked up for the rest of his life. Well, it's because of the statute of limitations. According to Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Brock, he said Hastert's conduct was horrendous, but because of the statute of limitations, he could only be charged with a financial crime related to the payments he was making to one of at least 4 victims of sexual abuse. And even the judge, Judge Durkin, his hands were tied. He wanted to throw the book at him, but he couldn't. And here's what's funny, right? I'm going to tie in something that's sort of related. When people flip out about trans people needing to go to the bathroom, thinking that they're all predators, they don't realize that predators don't fit into a certain archetype. They don't look. It's not a guy in a dress, okay? It could be anyone. They could be anywhere. They could look like anybody. It could even be a pro-family values Republican, which happens to be the case more often than not. In fact, I found that, the more that a person attempts to claim higher moral authority over someone else and then use them to bring them down, the less moral that person ends up usually being. And this was Dennis Hastert. Because remember, he was one of the guys who tried to impeach Bill Clinton for having his own affair. This guy screaming about morals and family values, all while he knew what he did to those teenagers, those boys. That is sickening, and that is the height of hypocrisy. Ugh. And look, man, he got off easy based on even his own standards. I have a quote from Hastert from 2003 on what he thinks should happen to child molesters. Get this. Quote, "It is equally important to stop these predators before they strike, to put repeat child molesters into jail for the rest of their lives, and to help law enforcement with the tools they need to get the job done." Oops. That was in 2003. Years after these alleged incidents took place. He said that with a straight face, knowing what he had done. This guy is a hypocrite of the highest order, and a predator, and a disgusting human being. There is nothing redeeming about this disgusting, horrific man. I would be so happy if they found a way to put him away for the rest of his miserable life. Now, unfortunately, because of the statute of limitations, we can't do that. So, I can really only hope that his guilt ends up destroying him until he dies a very lonely, very sad death. And I'll tell you what, I, for one, will not shed a tear for this predator.